All right, friends, welcome back to another episode here at The Growing Pro. My name is Adam. Everybody calls me Coach Hardgains. Today I want to talk about these podcast mics that we chose to use, for at least for now, because we've been getting a lot of questions about them. So obviously more people are used to seeing the Shure podcast mics or these Rode podcast mics. And so we are going to compare these podcast mics to those, as well as our standard overhead shotgun condenser mics, which we currently use the Technica AT897s. I've used a ton of Technica shotgun mics. You can take a look at a comparison video to many of those over here. But these are podcast mics made by TC Helicon, and they are called the Go XLR podcast mic. Now, we did go with white to match our podcast arms, but in the box you get an array of colors. You can change the little sleeve here on the podcast mic to any color you want. We've just stuck with this rose gold, which is fine by me. I like it just fine. We could go with white or really any other color. But this is the sound that comes out of this podcast mic directly to the Panasonic XLR input. There is no post-processing to this audio. So what you hear is this microphone directly to the XLR, recorded into the Panasonic GH5, directly through Final Cut Pro. No post-processing. I'm not going to post-process any of these comparatives. This is the direct sound input through the Go XLR to the XLR1 into the GH5, then uploaded into Final Cut Pro and directly uploaded to YouTube. No post-processing. So again, this is the sound of the Go XLR podcast microphone that you are currently hearing. Now, obviously, we do have two of them for when we have a guest on. These microphones cost $100 each. I purchased them from Sweetwater, no discount. This is not an affiliate or sponsored video. They're great microphones. I like the sound of them. I don't love the sound of them. It's not perfect. It is a little bit flat for me. I would like a little more high-end vibrancy, but it's a good sound, especially for a $100 microphone. Now, in the microphone pack, you also do get this three-way swivel mount, which is right here. The mount then goes onto the extension arm, and then, of course, again, you get those colorful collars. Now, one thing I like about this is the diaphragm to the microphone is not massive like a lot of the Shure comparatives. There's also no giant wind muff. You don't have this huge foam sleeve that goes over the mic. You can have it in front of your speaker's face like this without it just taking over the scene. It has a small metal mesh screen here that is adjustable. You can adjust this mesh screen to be further away from the microphone or closer to the microphone. I feel like it does a good job of blocking about 90% of the pops. So Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Most of the pops are blocked. Not all. And I will say that every once in a while, occasionally, there will be a spike that will come through. So it's not perfect, but it does a great job. So now let's go from the Go XLR mic to the Rode podcast mic, and I'll show you the difference. But before I do that, let me also mention that these do not require 48-volt phantom power. They are not condenser mics. They are super cardioid broadcast microphones. So no 48-volt necessary. So let's go directly from the Go XLR. And because there is no 48-volt phantom power required, it is okay to do a direct. Now we are using the Rode podcast mic. This, again, is the Rode podcast mic. It is about 4 to 5 inches away from my mouth, about the same as the Go XLR. Again, no 48-volt phantom power. I have not even adjusted the dials on the GH5. This is the same level. Right now, it is the exact same distance from my mouth as the Go XLR was. This is the sound comparison of the Rode podcast mic. Now, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. I do not have a muff on the Rode. This is just audio direct into the Rode podcast mic, into the Panasonic XLR input, to the GH5, through Final Cut Pro, no post-processing. Now let's compare the sound of these two podcast mics into our normal condenser shotgun style microphone, the Audio-Technica AT897, which does require 48 volt phantom power. Or you can utilize the additional battery to put in there if you don't have 48 volt available, but I never like to use those. So to do this properly, we do have to turn off the audio preamps before plugging in a condenser mic. We do not want to hot swap a condenser mic into 48 volt phantom power or having the gain turned all the way up. This is now the Audio-Technica AT897 that you see in front of me. I'm not going to worry about putting it out of the frame. I have it about 7 inches away from my mouth. I do have 48 volt phantom power engaged. Let's see if there's any background noise. I do have the low pass on the microphone engaged. There is no low pass engaged on the XLR1 input. This is the direct sound of the Audio-Technica 897 into the XLR1 with 48 volt phantom power into the GH5 through Final Cut Pro. Again, no post-processing. Now, the one thing that is nice about Shotgun Condenser's microphones is that I can move around a little bit here and there, and it can still pick up the sound pretty adequately. Whereas with broadcast podcast microphones, you do need to have the sound more direct in front of the microphone. The more you move around from the microphone directly, it will affect the sound input. But if you notice, as I'm facing the Shotgun Condenser microphone, I can move around a little bit, and it will still pick up the noise pretty much close to the same level. Now, with the foam screen on, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. That's what it sounds like. Now, taking the windscreen off, we should still have a pretty good sound. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers because this is a completely different microphone. I love the Audio-Technica microphones. I've said it a million times. After using some of the best and most expensive microphones in the world for professional level audio engineering, Audio-Technica makes a fantastic microphone. You can pick these amazing microphones up that compare to the NTG2, NTG3, 4, 5, and you can buy these half the price. And the quality is just as good, if not, I prefer the sound on the Audio-Technicas even more. Now, the windscreen is not required, but I do like to have it just for additional insurance against any sudden pops. But there you go. There is the Audio-Technica Shotgun Condenser AT897. So friends, you let me know what you think in the comment section about these three microphones. But before we close, let's get back to that Go XLR, because that's really what this video is about. All right, check. We are now back on the Go XLR microphone by TC Helicon. This is not a paid, sponsored, nor affiliated video. These are just the microphones that I chose to go with for this particular podcast style studio. In here, we do have a couple of the Rode podcast mics for table microphones. But these are the ones I wanted to use for the podcast arms. I like them. I like the look. I like the white. I think it's a little different. And I think it pops a little more. Not to mention the fact that I really do like that no one else has these. And really, no one knows what they are. So it does raise a lot of questions, and people ask us all the time, what microphones are we using? So there you go, friends. These are the podcast microphones that you are seeing in the majority of these episodes, but there's plenty out there for any budget. Again, these were $100 a piece from Sweetwater. That's where we got them from. But there's a few other microphones that I am going to introduce to you that I think most of you have not seen nor heard, because they're not the popular ones. Yes, I can pull out a Shure SM7B and show you what that sounds like, We'll do that in a later video. But a newer style microphone that I am looking to pick up and try are the Shure MV7 Plus or the Shure MV7W. I want to try those. Those are microphones I've never tried before. And there's also a fantastic podcast style microphone by Universal Audio that I'm going to introduce to you guys in an upcoming video. All right, friends, take a look at that. Again, here at The Growing Pro, we're not trying to give you guys the best of the best equipment for you to spend all your hard-earned cash on. We're trying to give you affordable gear so that you can circumvent all of these successes and not quite so successful endeavors, circumvent the process, get to a point where you are making money with your craft faster. I'll catch you next video.